welcome to the TacoCast. I'm Crystal.
I'm Will.
And you're our audience today on this lovely Sunday. I hope you're doing very well. Thank you for joining us. So, today's topic, Will, how about you start?
Well, I thought we would talk about conspiracy theories today.
Ooh.
And not just conspiracy theories that are in political nature, especially with the recent elections, but conspiracy theories in general, from everything from Union Gold to whatever, and we'll see how much time we have allotted for it. And I hope you enjoy this. If you do, give this video a thumbs up afterwards. Now, what would you like to talk about? Which conspiracy theory would you like to talk about first?
Oh, there's so many.
Lizard people or...
Lizard people, oddly enough, they make a show in a variety of conspiracies. From the recent iteration, the QAnon conspiracy theories, they show up pretty predominantly in U.S. conspiracy theories. There's always this underlying thing that there's this race of lizard people who control humans or are somehow manipulating the trajectory of human societies, not necessarily in charge, but manipulating human societies.
The lizard people conspiracy theory that I heard was everyone who is in power is a lizard person, and they only are elected by other fellow lizard people. And there are 3 different levels of hierarchy in the lizard people community. Now, these people believe that you unzip the zipper from the back of the head and there's a lizard in there, and they're from another planet, and they actually have a name for this planet. It's in another solar system. And they believe that these lizard people are in control of everything. Banking, politics, everywhere. And only lizard people are ever elected and put in power. That no one ever in the history of the Earth has there been somebody who is not a lizard person.
Is this one of the ones where humans are like some kind of livestock for the lizard people?
Yes.
And, yeah.
They're well, the lizard people are here to mine us for different things, and that's why they also in that theory, conspiracy theory, they also believe that when you get an injection, a vaccination for something, they're not just giving you that, but it's a tracking one, so that's why they give it to you at a really young age, and that it's used to be able to scan you with this ultraviolet light, and they can see and track you to know just how important you are, or if you have anything for them to mine from you. It is a pretty deep rabbit hole when you get into that one.
A lot of energy that someone would have to expend to come up with that kind of stuff.
They have an actual church and everything. I mean, they are, and I'm not making fun of these people. I think it's a wacky conspiracy, but they are real people who live here. And they work. They go to school. They hold down jobs. They're good, fine Americans, but they don't know what the lizard people are doing to our soil. If you get that reference, that's amazing.
So with the that's actually pertinent. Although for a lot of people, these conspiracy theories, they come to a point where they take over a person's life,
Yeah.
and they're no longer very well adjusted. In a manner very, very similar to cults, the conspiracy theory begins to overtake their life and destroy it from the inside out. As we've seen with people being disillusioned with the QAnon conspiracy theories, there's people across the country who have lost their familial relationships. They've lost their support network because the people around them are just not having it, and they're tired of it, and they're not going to work anymore. One person emptied their savings. But conversely, while it's easy to write people who've got conspiracy theories off, and to not want to interact with them, and I get it because they're unpleasant to interact with. the nature of a conspiracy is that nothing that you provide that would counter the conspiracy theory will be accepted by the person with the conspiracy theory. Every item of proof has either been fabricated in their mind or is a deeper into the conspiracy. There's nothing that you can say. There's literally nothing that you can say that will get away from that, and it's mentally exhausting and emotionally draining. And before I go on to this next segment, I do not blame anybody who has stepped back from somebody like that in their life at all. Do not ever feel bad for that. You have to take your own mental health as a priority, and for a lot of people, removing that person from your life or putting significant distance between yourself and those people is good for your mental health. So don't ever feel bad for that. Now that I've said that, one of the things that they're finding is that when these people lose their support networks, as they do, it makes it harder for them to come out of the conspiracy. So how do you balance that? How do you balance people being protective of their own mental and emotional health with knowing that by doing so, you might possibly make somebody more at risk?
Sorry for the click there. I mean, I didn't mean to turn my microphone off, but I did accidentally. Yeah, so I watched a documentary about the lizard people, and the documentary was originally made by a gentleman who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and he ended up self-harming himself pretty to an extent, and it was ended up hospitalized for a large period of his life afterwards. And the group who believed, and followed this, train of thought, with lizard people, they refused to see that what he had done was because of his, paranoid schizophrenia. They believed that the lizard people had done this to him because he was going to tell the truth. And the documentary was that he was doing was then finished up by other people from within their group, where, I mean, he went off the rails. You could see how it started off, somewhat normal, explaining, that everything that was going on, and then, as his paranoid schizophrenia took over his life, and he was slowly, went off the rail, completely off the rail, and everything else. But it's really sad, and because you can see how he alienated himself from his support network so massively, till he got to the point where, as his, schizophrenia took over, that, he stopped medications, he stopped going to his doctor, he stopped going everywhere, because again, he thought the lizard people were out to get him, and he really thought that this was going on. But I would like to cover, a couple other conspiracies. So, what other one would, strike you as interesting that's out there?
Actually, Elizabeth and I were just watching a thing on this yesterday, and it's this theory that humans, it's along the same line. So it's like humans were these perfect beings. It very much follows the fall from Eden trajectory that you see in a lot of modern things, is that we were perfect and did all of these things, and then something happened to destroy the perfection of humans, and it was something along those lines. So humans were these perfect beings that communicated through thought and emotion, I think is how it was. Yeah. It was
thoughts and emotions. What are those?
So it was weird.
Explain.
So the person who was talking was like, humans communicated through thoughts and emotions just like animals. And at the same time, Elizabeth and I look at each other and we're like, that's not how animals talk. They use a combination of pheromones, facial expressions, and sounds. Are you okay, sir? So And I'm going to stop for a second there and make a small comment, is that for a lot of people, it's easy to get suckered in if you don't know. Um, and it's harder to get suckered in to a conspiracy theory if you already have the education to know that certain aspects of it are wrong. So in this particular case, this guy's talking about how animals communicate. A lot of people don't necessarily know how animals communicate because most humans don't pay attention to animal communication. It's not necessarily something that you would know is wrong. If you pay attention to how animals communicate, if it's something that you've studied before, you'd notice that there's a vast array of animal communication involving sense and expressions and sounds. So you would know that that was wrong, but you might not necessarily. So anyways, going back, yeah, so humans were these perfect creatures, and then these aliens came, and the humans were like, oh, aliens, we want to be your friend, and then the aliens infected us with something. I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of the time that we were watching it just going, what even is this? And so I would miss large sections of what the guy was explaining because I was stuck on a previous one trying to figure out how that was accurate. But it was very long, and it involved a number of inaccurate things. An inaccurate understanding of how geography works was one. And I think that you've noticed that in some too. People are we found this
definitely.
rock, and this rock is only from this one place. And then people are like, the tides are a thing, bud.
Glaciers.
Glaciers exist, and they deposit stuff. And, oh shit, there was one that had to do with volcanic ash, I think. And there was this volcanic ash deposit, and there aren't any volcanoes near where the volcanic ash deposit was at, and they considered that proof of their thing. And this geologist was like, the Mount St. Helens has erupted a lot, and that ash spreads pretty far. Yeah. So the ones that I've been listening to more recently, though, coming off of that one, are the ones that involve the experimental surgery one, the face swap.
Oh, are you talking about the president?
Yeah, the one that says that Trump is...
this one's good.
Yeah, so this new one that's going around that says Trump is still president, but he took Biden's face.
Yep.
Yeah, he took Biden's face.
And they're just letting people think that Biden is president because they don't want to disrupt the world powers, and the Paris Accord and all these other things play into it. Interesting side note, ladies and gentlemen, the Paris Climate Accord was not has nothing to do with Paris. It was just where it was signed.
That's true.
It has nothing to do with Pittsburgh or Paris at all. It's a world climate initiative. It was signed in Paris. That's why it's called the Paris Climate Accord.
Oh, those damn Parisians.
I know, right? But people really believe that it's Paris against the United States. It's like, how did you get to that point? And then people. I had a couple people send me the actual links because they were concerned that their jobs in certain industries were going to be lost because of what Paris is doing, and Paris wants to rule, and Paris is in control. And I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break the bad news to you, but it wasn't. That's just where it was signed. I mean, if we signed it on, we don't call the end of World War II, the agreement because it was signed on a ship. The end of war where the Japanese surrendered, we call it, the end of World War II, and it doesn't matter where the hell it was signed. It's just, they surrendered and it was over with.
You make a really good point, though, is that fear is a big motivator into people. You take something that people don't necessarily understand a lot about, and again, that's not their fault. There's billions of things happening in the world at any given time. You can't know them all,
Well,
and so you take something that people don't know a whole lot about, and something that could potentially impact them, and they're going to be fearful, and it's legitimate, you know.
Case in point, COVID-19. Yeah, you can everything you just said. You can wrap all that up in the conspiracy theories that are wrapped up around COVID about how it was man-made in a laboratory, and they released it out here because the Chinese wanted to drive our economy into the hole because it would make it, I guess, easier for us to buy their televisions. I don't know. I don't know what their real thought process there would be. It's like, hey, let's destroy this country so they cannot have money to buy our goods. But then, all that conspiracy around how it spreads and if COVID-19 is real at all.
That one actually irritates me a lot.
It's like, to no end does that one.
Just like as a person, like professionally, when people are like, "Oh, it's not real. All those tests are fake." I'm like, "You want to say that to my face?"
Yeah. Right?
Like what?
Because
why would you come at me like that? That's mean. Yeah, it's. Now I'm going to go ahead and preface this with I'm very cynical. I'm very cynical in that I don't think that there is a world government that is capable of pulling off a global conspiracy because they're dumb. Well, no, that's not just because they're dumb. They're dumb, but there's another factor also is that people can't keep a secret.
No.
If there's
God no, not in this day and age, especially. Somebody always wants to talk.
Yeah. So the idea that there's a global conspiracy, governments are stupid. They do stupid shit all the time. They're very self-serving. They very rarely follow evidence when they make decisions, and there's more than one person involved, so there's no possible way that it could actually get pulled off. And I could be wrong. There could be a government conspiracy where they did a global conspiracy and then whomever was in charge summarily executed everybody else. And then nobody would say anything because, they were all dead. But could you pull that off globally? And I don't think so. And I think part of the reason why it's easy for people to think global conspiracy is a thing that can happen is because a lot of people, even myself, can't really comprehend in our minds how large global actually is. Our planet is vast. There's literally billions of us, and the human mind can't really comprehend billion as a unit.
Yeah.
And so when people think, even people who know better, like myself, when people think about volumes and sizes and stuff like that in populations, we always think smaller what we're used to. That is our frame of reference. And it's just how the human mind works. It's what we do. You can't, what's a good way to phrase it? Like, you can be cognizant of it and you can work against it, be like, okay, like when you're making decisions based on personal experience, I prefer to look at data because my personal experience does not necessarily reflect what the data reflects.
Right.
I know X number of people who have done Y and Z happened, so I might weight, Z, or I might weight Y as dangerous because, most of the people I know have done it and it's been bad. But, maybe I only know 3 people who have done it, so let's look at global data. And even, I have to remind myself. Very
analytical.
Yes. But I have to remind myself to do that my personal experience may not match what data says. But that's not how our brains are wired.
Do you think there are people out there like us, a majority, where we are very analytical? We ladies and gentlemen, we believe in science.
It exists as a thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
But
anybody can do it. Anybody. Yeah, no, legit. Anybody can do it. There was a time period in the world when mostly rich European dudes, but forget that. But they would just fucking do shit, experiments in their home, blow shit up, whatever, mixing stuff. People would do that, and we need to get back to that, not the blowing things up.
No.
Not that part, but like in your own home, there's tons of experiments that you can do, and even as adults, a lot of them are geared towards kids. You know, like let's watch a seed grow. Fuck it, you're an adult, but watch a seed grow. Put that seed in there with the paper towel and watch that seed grow.
Okay, that's a nice little rant there. But again, back to my question is, do you think there's more, in the world, analytical, or, do you think that there are people that are different? I mean,
Humans are vastly different from one human to another, across socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. And I think, though, a lot of it is going to depend on what that individual needs at that given time.
Okay.
And the other thing, the human mind is very, very resource greedy, and so it also tries to be very, very efficient. But lots of times that efficiency is only good for short term, not long term. Which is, like I was saying earlier, how we tend to weight our personal experience. I've seen 3 people do this and it turned out badly, therefore this must always be bad. It's a very efficient mode of easy logic, and it's how our brains are geared to work. So you have to actively fight against that. And it's not necessarily good or bad in a moral sense, it's just how our brains are. But for some people, I don't think they have the luxury of getting past that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you what's a good way to put it? You have to have time and space to go, okay, it's a process you have to work through. And if you're constantly under pressure of any kind, I don't think you're going to really be able to work through that, to get out of your natural inclination. It's like, so every year in the summer, they're like, hey, don't fucking leave your kids in the back of the car. They'll die, right? And everybody's like, I would never. You would. And you would because your brain is taking shortcuts that it sees as efficient. It's not really good or bad in a moral sense. It literally just is how our brains work. They cut corners all the time because they're conserving resources. And it's kind of along those things. Like, your brain is just going to do what it's going to do, and consciously you have to put those brakes on. But in order to know that you need to do so, you have to have time and opportunity.
Okay. So, what is another conspiracy theory out there? You want me to pick one?
Yes.
Okay. How about flat Earth?
Oh, Jesus fuck.
Now, remember, there's a giant ice wall that is keeping everything from falling off this magical plate that we live on. That the Earth is not round at all. It's not oval either. It's flat, like a disc. And that's why they make maps that way, to show the world flat. If the world was round like a globe, like we've been taught in school, then, well, they would make maps that way. But since they print maps on flat paper and they spread it out, and there's a giant ice wall around it all that keeps everything from falling off.
Who would have thought that the noble art of cartography would eventually bring us to the point to where I'd want to punch my fellow humans in the face?
True, but yes.
Oh, flat Earth. Why would you bring that one up? You know I hate that.
Well, because I think it's a very interesting theory that just because something is printed on a piece of paper, or that's their first, and that's like, the one thing that they always look back on and say, it's on paper, therefore flat Earth is real, because
I'm going to go ahead and preface this with, on an intellectual level, I realize that, like I said earlier, about the human mind not really being able to comprehend the vastness of our world, being the root of a lot of cognitive issues involving conspiracy theories. So I recognize that I said that, and I mean that. I do. But what the fuck, flat earthers? What the fuck? Okay, all joking aside, a lot of that does tie back into flat Earth, because people assume I can't see no curvature of the Earth. Well, no,
I
you
can't.
can't. You can't because it's huge. It's the world is huge on a scale that the human mind cannot really grasp. So people just assume that they can see the curvature of the Earth, and since they don't see it, it must be flat. Well, it's really fucking big. Um, oh God, flat Earth.
If you're suicidal, they come to your home and they take you away, so to get you help so you don't self harm. But if you're a flat earther and you raise a lot of money, you can shoot yourself into outer space and then come crashing back to Earth and die.
That guy did that, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And he did it to prove that there was no curvature of the Earth. I wonder what he felt like as gravity took a hold of him, and his little self-made rocket and slammed him into the Earth at a couple hundred miles an hour. There's conspiracy theories out there that gravity isn't real either. Oh yes, I found their website. Gravity, it wasn't invented until 1986.
Why do you do these things to me? Why do you...
They're real.
Why are you saying words? Stop saying words.
They believed that gravity wasn't invented until 1986.
Ooh, shit just fucking floated until then?
I don't know what happened in 85.
No.
Apparently in 85, everything was being held down, according to their website, by a giant magnetic field. And I said, isn't that gravity? A magnetic field?
Gravity's not a magnetic field.
But
It's
this
an
was
attraction of mass.
I know. This was a man-made magnet. They held them, and they said the reason why the polar ice caps are melting at an alarming rate is because they turned a magnetic machine off that held everything down to Earth. But then they stumbled upon this scientific, discovery, and they call gravity, and they increased it by 400%. And when they did that, now they don't need the giant magnetic machine in the North Pole because they now have gravity.
I just don't understand why you would say these things to me.
They're real. And according to their website, they have over 10,000 people who are in their group. But I could only find 4 people who were actually commenting comments.
I think it's kind of like 1 million moms. They say they have 1 million moms, and it's like, what, 10,000 something, I think? I don't remember where they were at when I checked.
1 million mom march.
Yeah, but I was like, it ain't a million.
They couldn't even come up with enough people to be considered a town.
Hey, but you know what? Big goals. You gotta dream about. You dream high, reach big.
Reach for the stars.
Dream big, reach high. Whatever.
Okay, so you don't want to talk about the flat earthers,
No, I don't.
Or the anti-gravity. Gravity is now invented by man. And by the way, say Isaac Newton wasn't real. They believe he was made up and he was snuck into history books. Yeah, they believe this, ladies and gentlemen.
I swear,
So,
Will does these things to me on purpose. He's just like,
how about we talk
hey
about?
babe, where's your blood pressure at today? Normal? Fuck that.
How about the those who believe that the Union during the Civil War was not broke after all, that it's all a conspiracy, and that they've hid millions of dollars in gold in the South Dakota hills.
Why? What purpose would that serve?
Because they want to, later on, be able to, fund a revolution once they find that gold, and they're going to be able to fund and buy weapons and everything else, and they'd be able to come back, and be the great Union they were.
That doesn't make any kind of sense at all.
I know, and why would they hide it? Supposedly it was buried in the deep South in Louisiana, but then was dug up and was moved from Louisiana to South Dakota. And they believe, just like the movie, they believe that there's actually treasure maps that show where it's at, and that there are certain things that are written in the Constitution, and along with other clues in other historical documents. Like the Louisiana Purchase shows part of it as well and talks about it. And the clues are the first letter of every sentence in the Louisiana Purchase. Talks about
Humans
where
do
they're
love puzzles, don't they? They
Oh,
love
don't
puzzles
they?
so much they
They
just
love
fucking
them.
make them up.
Oh yeah. Yes. They made it on the evening news. They were on, I believe they were out of Atlanta, Georgia, where they were originally formed, this group was. And they believed that certain aspects of the Civil War are untrue, that they're also, hardcore believers that the Democratic Party of today is also still owning slaves. And I'm like, oh, okay. Where are they hiding their slaves?
Yeah, seriously.
Apparently, it's connected to the pedophile ring that is in the pizzeria. I love how they grasp a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, and they just kind of throw it into like a blender of crap, and then they say, okay, do you believe this? No? All right, how about we throw this in there too? Now it's more believable, right?
One thing that seems to come up though with a lot of these conspiracy theories is that, at least something that I've noticed is it seems like they're kind of hopeful. You know what I mean? Like, there's this secret treasure. We're gonna find it, and everything's gonna be awesome once we find it. There's these lizard people, but we know how to find them. It seems weird, but it gives a measure of control and ability to understand the world. Not in a way that makes sense to anybody else,
Right.
but it gives a measured order to the unordered.
I see what you're saying there. What was the name of the movie with Roddy Piper? He's here to chew bubble gum, and he's all out of bubble gum. What was it? They're here, or I see them, or where he put on his special sunglasses and you could see.
Oh, you mean They?
The movie?
Was it They?
Yeah, whatever it is. I'm sure somebody will comment, after this in the comment section what it is.
They Live?
They're here.
Oh shit.
Yeah, whatever. But
I know what you're talking about though. He puts on the glasses and then you see like there's like a billboard and he puts on the glasses and it's like alien people with the face and yeah.
Well, you can also see the skull people. They have the fake faces and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're like alien people, but they're like fake people.
Right. But my point to that is, I think people are trying to just make sense of the world around them in a lot of cases. It's like, how do you make sense of this crazy world that we live in? With COVID, is it real? I mean, you can't see it, so does it have to be real?
For a long time, people thought that disease came from inside the diseased. It was actually controversial the first time somebody was like, dude, check it out. I think that diseases actually come from outside a lot of the time. And everyone was like, shut your mouth, you fucking liar. And he's like, no, I did some experiments and stuff. Maggots, for instance. People thought maggots just sprung up out of dead tissue. And he did a series of experiments where he put meat into a container and then he covered the top and then flies couldn't get in there and no maggots sprung up. And then they're like, well, it's just because it couldn't breathe. And he was like, well, that's fucking weird. So then he does the same thing, but like with cheesecloth, right? So you've got air flowing, but, flies couldn't get in. And it's the same thing. And as simple as that sounds, at the time, it was like, whoa, mind's blown. That maggots don't just spring forth from dead tissue. They're laid there. They're baby flies. What the hell?
Yeah. So, what's your other favorite conspiracy that's out there? If you had to pick one conspiracy theory, what would you pick?
I wouldn't pick any of them because I think they're silly. So we're going to end on this one then, and we'll end on the microchips in vaccines.
That's real.
So, I talk to on a regular basis people across the world that work in healthcare, and microchips and vaccines. Will's right. It was a thing that people talked about. Not for tracking any given individuals or whatnot, but the root of this rumor actually comes from there's some vaccines that you can only receive once. And for aid workers who vaccinate populations in hard to reach areas, and also there's some areas where it's dangerous to vaccinate people because warlords in the area will kill you if they find out that you've been vaccinated. So aid workers are talking about ways to track who has received vaccines and who hasn't in areas where it's hard to maintain records and it's hard to get to, and there's,
The Bill Gates conspiracy.
anyways,
He wants to track us.
one of the solutions
Well, I did
that was
buy Bill.
you need to
You're
shut
not
up or I'm
tracking
gonna
me.
hit you. There was a couple of solutions that were proposed. One of them was a light reactive tattoo. You get the inoculation, you get the tattoo, and then when another aid group comes in to vaccinate people, they can, up the arm, nothing reacts. Okay, you need this vaccine. If it does, okay, you don't. And then, of course, somebody pointed out, a lot of these warlords have electricity. They could do the same thing.
Yeah.
One of the other ones was a microchip. They like a scannable microchip that has the day, time, the vaccines that were given encoded on it, and then, when aid workers come back from different groups, they could, okay, did you get these vaccines? No. And for the same reasons, at least at that time, those potential things were discarded as potential solutions because whatever solution they come up with, somebody is going to find an end run around it. They're still working on ways to make vaccinations of difficult to reach populations easier, at risk, difficult to reach populations. It's one of the reasons why the polio vaccine, oftentimes when they're vaccinating certain populations, they use oral polio vaccine, but it doesn't always have the intended effect because you've got people who are vaccinating against polio. A lot of these populations live in areas that have poorer sanitation while you haven't managed to vaccinate the entire population. And when you use oral polio vaccine, that person is going to shed live polio virus in their feces. If you don't have good sanitation, the portion of the population that hasn't been vaccinated most likely is going to catch it. And it's an unfortunate side effect is that 2 of the major polio outbreaks were caused by aid workers attempting to protect vulnerable populations.
I know in Somalia, they have a huge problem with just delivering the HPV, shots and vaccinating against HPV because not just the warlords, but the country itself has a huge, long-standing issue with vaccinations, and they have literally taken the vaccinations that are supposed to go to the people and held them for ransom. And it's like, oh, well, we'll give you back all your, your vaccinations. You want to give our population. We'll give it back to you, Mr. Gates. We'll give it back to you for $200 million. Which goes directly into the people's pockets who are in control of the government. And how can the 4th and 5th, most wealthy individuals on earth come from the poorest countries ever? They didn't make their money in oil. They made it because they embezzled from their country. And yet they're on the Forbes list of the the richest people in the world. And I'm like, really? You've been in a civil war in your country for close to 70 years. And what did you have? You have nothing. You have dirt. But you stole all the aid money coming in. You stole all the everything else, and what you couldn't steal for yourself and for your family, you ransomed back off to the people who owned it. So,
Well, that's a
yay.
depressing note to end on.
I know, right? Well, let's end that on this happy note. Thank you for being here today.
Hope you guys have a lovely Sunday.